Studios original.
Hello and welcome to Webcrawlers, the podcast where we do a deep dive into the weirdest, strangest, and most mysterious corners of the internet. So says the
That's
Chat
our new
GPT.
AI intro.
Yeah, which is so much better than the intro we could write ourselves. Yeah. I'm Allie Siegel.
And I'm Melissa Stettin.
Chatbot is not a bimbo, is one thing we've learned.
No, chatbot is smart.
Yeah, chatbot's smart. Melissa, who are our patrons?
We have Kelly, Dominique, Cassandra, MD, and OKC.
Guys, welcome to the team. Hop on as soon as you can because Maria and I, the famed Missing Maria, hashtag Missing Maria, she is going to come with me to Alien Con tomorrow. And all of that footage, all the interviews are going to be on our Patreon. So, and then Melissa and I will do a short wrap up, and maybe Maria will come for that if she can pencil us in.
She's so busy. You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
She doesn't have time for us anymore.
Yeah. Melissa, what is our episode about today?
Well, today's episode is about a serial killer called the Doodler.
The Doodler.
The Doodler. It's like the Watcher.
The Watcher.
And we have an interview today with author Kate Zaliznock, who you know, Allie.
Yes, I'm so excited. She is a writer. She also has a magazine that I was featured in, which we'll talk about.
Ooh,
no big deal.
Playboy.
Yeah. Hustler, a little magazine called Hustler. And now she is a true crime author and investigator. So we're an expert on this case. So we're very lucky to have her.
Yeah, this book is amazing that she wrote. It's so
really
good.
in depth and really interesting.
So the Doodler is one of San Francisco's most infamous cold case murderers that I had never heard of.
Me either. Crazy. And it's essentially local.
Yeah. And he is believed to have killed at least 6 and up to 14 men in San Francisco between January 1974 and September 1975. He prowled bars and restaurants in communities like the Castro and the Tenderloin that were popular with gay men, and lured them into sexual encounters before killing them and leaving their bodies on beaches or in parks around the city.
Oof.
And he was called the Doodler because he would draw sketches of the men before he assaulted and killed them. That's so creepy.
Yeah, like imagine like a caricature artist being like, here, I drew a picture of you.
Caricature of you and then murdering you.
It's like, I wonder if the pictures were good. Because it'd be like a double punishment if they drew like a really ugly picture of you and then killed you.
Like with buck teeth.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't get caricatures at amusement parks because I'm like, I know I have a big nose. You don't have to remind me
like
of what I look like.
Nathan for you.
Yes.
The offensive sketch drawer guy.
Yeah. So he drew
Great
pictures.
episode.
Crazy.
So according to one victim who spoke with the police, the Doodler told them he was a cartoonist.
Interesting.
And he's only publicly been linked to cases in San Francisco, but there's a chance he may have killed in other places.
Uh-oh.
So why hasn't he been caught? So the police at the time believed that they found him. Multiple victims survived encounters with the Doodler and described this person to the police. And among the victims was reportedly a well-known entertainer.
Wow.
And a diplomat. Both men with like a lot to lose if their sexual orientation became public knowledge, because apparently they were in the closet still at this time.
Yeah, because if you think about the 70s, it's still, there were a lot of murders. You could lose your job. I mean, tarnish your reputation. It was a horrible time.
Yeah, and homosexuality wasn't decriminalized until 1 month before the killing stopped. It's crazy that
That's insane.
That's not that long ago that like being gay was like
a crime.
Prejudiced against people. Yeah, it's crazy.
Fuck.
It's crazy. So one of the suspects was cooperative with law enforcement, although he never admitted to any of the crimes. And the victims who survived all stayed silent and never testified in court because that would mean publicly outing themselves.
So sad.
Without their testimony, the case couldn't go forward.
And it's so horrible because, like, what a detriment to justice. Not saying that for them. Like, they had every right not to publicly out themselves and ruin their lives due to the state of American, like, politics and belief system. Like, imagine if it was celebrated and okay to be open. So many cases could have been solved, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And maybe these murders wouldn't even happened if it was okay to have be comfortable with your sexual orientation. Who knows?
So in 2018, the San Francisco Police Department investigator Dan Cunningham was put in charge of the department's cold case unit. And he put the Doodler case back on the front burner. He's like, we got to open this back up. We got to figure this out. And then in 2019, Cunningham told CNN he sent DNA samples from 2 crime scenes to the lab. And at the time, he said that they were beginning to connect the dots. Like, all it takes, it's crazy that you hear about these cold cases, and then someone retires and a new investigator comes in and is like, well, we got to solve this. Why hasn't anyone been? Why are you so lazy? You're not solving this.
Right.
It's really crazy. The same man identified as a suspect in the 70s is still the primary person of interest. And he's recently been interviewed again by the police, like 40 years later or something.
And have they disclosed this person's name?
Someone had found his name, but I don't know if it's actually his name.
Yeah, no, they have a sketch, but I don't believe that they have.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's not legal to
I don't think
disclose the name if there's not really
enough. He hasn't
enough.
been charged, so
right.
I don't think. So here are the victims. There's Gerald Kavanaugh, Joseph J. Stevens, Klaus Christman, Frederick Kaplan, Harold Goldberg, and Warren Andrews are the 6 confirmed victims.
Jeez. Gosh.
So Gerald Kavanaugh is 49. He was found January 27th, 1974 at Ocean Beach. His body was half in the water. He'd been stabbed 17 times, and they found defensive wounds, so indicating that he tried to fight back.
Oh, so sad.
Jay Stevens was 27, was discovered at Spreckles Lake 5 months later. He'd been stabbed 5 times. He was a well-known drag performer, and he actually won an award in 1973 for his drag work.
Oh, so sad.
And then a few weeks later, Klaus Christman, a German tourist, was found dead at Ocean Beach. He'd been slashed across the throat.
Oh.
And unlike Kavanaugh and Stevens, who were single, Christman was married with children. And Frederick Kaplan, 32, a Vietnam War veteran and nurse, was killed May 1975. Harold Goldberg, 66, found at the 16th hole of the Lincoln Park golf course. The coroner told the media the body was hidden in an igloo-like cove of brush. So it was like hidden.
Yeah.
And then Warren Andrews was working as a lawyer for the U.S. Postal Service in San Bruno when he was discovered in a pool of blood by a hiker at Land's End in April 1975. He suffered traumatic injuries from being brutally beaten and died a few weeks later. He was 52.
So this is all like crimes of passion. The stabbing and the slitting someone's throat and beating someone to death. I mean, that's all crimes of passion.
So the surviving victims. So we have this diplomat from a country in Northern Europe. He will remain nameless.
Okay.
He first encountered the Doodler at 2 a.m. July 1975. He saw him drawing pictures of animals on napkins and invited him back up to his apartment. And the Doodler went to the bathroom, locked the door, didn't come out for a bit. Then suddenly he came out and stabbed the diplomat.
Oh, God.
He recalls the Doodler saying, "You guys are all alike," whatever that means. And he was able to break free because the Doodler's steak knife broke. So this guy escaped. 2 weeks later, the Doodler was able to get back into that same apartment building, which is odd, went into an apartment, tied up a guy with rope, but this guy started screaming and the security came, but the Doodler was able to escape. That's strange that they went into the same apartment building, was like, I'm going to try to kill someone else.
Yeah. It's so weird. I'm getting this like very vivid image, and like I mean, who knows where this is coming from, but this is just my perception of the Doodler. And like, as we learn more about it, like, who knows? And we don't know. But I feel like this is a man who is very repressed sexually and is probably, homosexual and wants to pursue these kinds of things. And like, maybe like when he finally gets to a point where something sexual might happen, feels so much rage that he can't go through with it, that he ends up like acting out and killing. And I can imagine like him going to this diplomat's house and like maybe when he's locking himself in the bathroom, he's like having a conversation with himself of like, can you do that? Or I can even imagine him like honestly like jerking off in the bathroom or something like that, because he feels like all this like sexual feelings, and then coming out and like killing him because he's like so angry. And I feel like that you guys are all alike is like maybe like this idea of maybe like, you invited me up without knowing me or something like that. And I don't know, like there's just so much repressed feelings around this.
Yeah,
I
think that's what all the investigators assume too. But this apartment building, which I read in Katie's book, was built in 1966 and was allegedly cursed by Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
That was I read that. I was like, huh?
Yeah, what a weird crossover.
Because the building replaced the Fox Theater. And apparently Anton LaVey played organ there a few days before it was demolished. That's the rumor. That's what he claims.
That's what he says.
But that's just what he said.
That's so bizarre.
Interesting fact about that building.
An interesting history of that building.
The third surviving victim was an actor who was well known enough in America to be fearful of being outed.
Wow.
So I wonder who that was in the 70s.
Yeah.
He said he invited the Doodler into his home, and in bed, a knife fell out of the Doodler's jacket pocket.
Oh, God.
So he was able to like get that guy out of there, like escape before he was going to kill him. The diplomat described the Doodler as young, between 19 and 23, black, tall and lanky, narrow face with high-set cheekbones, wide-set eyes with a calm look to them.
Oh.
The sketch was made in 1975.
Yeah, so there's sketches available if you Google it. There's sketches, and then there's also an age. It's not age regression because that's in the past, right? What is it called?
It's progression.
Progression. I was going to say age aggression. I'm like, that's not. Yeah, there's an age progression sketch.
It's an age regression. That's what he looks like when he's 5.
Yeah, they have like when he's in his mother's womb.
So there's a possible break in the case. So a secretary of a psychiatrist called the police and said her boss was seeing a patient who might be the Doodler.
Oh, shit.
The police ignored the tip.
Oh, my God.
So the secretary called back, gave a license plate number 3 days later.
Jesus Christ.
And then the psychiatrist called the police and said one of his patients had confessed to being the Doodler and he looked like the sketch. I love that they a secretary called. They're like, no, ma'am, we're not. And then the psychiatrist called and they're like, oh, a man's calling.
Well, also, I love the idea of being a psychiatrist and then being like, hey, Sarah, will you call the cops about how this client's a murderer? And she's like, sure.
Hey, just if when you have a second, just call the cops and say,
I'm seeing a murderer.
Thanks.
Like, I take care of that
break.
stat. Yeah.
He said he looks like the Doodler. Psychiatrist said he was having a hard time dealing with his sexuality.
Interesting.
The police interviewed this guy, and he said that he was no longer having trouble with his sexuality because he had a girlfriend and everything was okay. He's like, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Didn't he do conversion therapy or something, or what was known at the time as conversion therapy?
Oh,
or I guess it's still.
I think so.
I think that he was put in a hospital for conversion therapy.
But DNA wasn't a thing back then, so there's no way to tie him to the murders.
That's so crazy.
They surveilled him for a while, and then coincidentally, the killings stopped.
I mean,
coincidentally.
Yeah.
So this guy, the suspect, he took a road trip around the U.S. shortly after being questioned, which was a little odd.
Yeah.
He went from San Francisco to the South, then to the East Coast, then to the Midwest. And the police said there may have been similar murders in Louisiana.
Oh, God.
But there's unsolved murders that happened while he was there.
Oh, Jesus.
So, he's like, I got to get out of San Fran. I got to go murder somewhere else.
Yeah. What a coincidence that the murders stopped when he started being pursued in San Francisco and then started in another place that he was visiting.
And then in 2018, they updated the suspect sketch. He's probably in his 70s by now.
Wow.
And the police contacted this original suspect, the patient. He reiterated his innocence, but they secretly got a DNA sample from him.
That old, have a cup of coffee.
Yeah, like who was that? The East Area rapist?
Yeah.
So in 2019, they officially reopened the case. They tried to find the psychiatrist who reported him back in 75. The only evidence they had, like a record of that, was a piece of paper with the name Dr. Priest, C. Highland Hospital. They found it just on a scrap of paper. But they realized it was probably spelled wrong. An investigator at the San Francisco Chronicle found a Dr. Priest, Preece, working at Highland Hospital at the time, but he died in 2005. Because he's probably
older, yeah.
Yeah. So the police believe he may have killed up to 16 people, and it's still at large today, but it's open case.
Yeah,
so
and
still working on it.
Reward money, etc., things like that have been increased for trying to solve the case, etc. She'll give us some illuminating
and
facts
also we'll
about
get into
that,
the Twinkie defense,
which is the most
which
insane,
is a crazy thing.
Yeah, and just the police corruption, etc. Let's take a quick break for announcements. Webcrawlers has a Patreon to get access to bonus episodes, adventures to Alien Con and other conventions, shout outs, merchandise discounts. Please go to patreon.com/webcrawlers. You can donate as little as $2 a month to become one of our bimbo patrons. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. If you give us a 5-star review, we will shout you out. Give us some 5-star reviews because some lames have been giving us some lame-o dorks have been giving us some lower reviews for some things they're not happy about. Also, Erios has a hotline. Insert jingle here. 626-604-6262. Erios. You guys have been coming back full force, just like we asked. Continue to call, please. We love it so much. Now, back to our program. Today, we are so lucky we have guest and expert Kate Zaliznock. She is the writer of the San Francisco Doodler Murders. She is a Bay Area-based writer and editor. Her past work has covered a wide range of topics, including music, history, science, pop culture, and politics. She is also the founder of Open Color. It's an arts collective and magazines. And no big deal, but I have been featured in it in the first edition, if you want to check that out. And this is her first true crime book, and we both read it, and it was fantastic, and we are lucky to have her expertise and ask her some questions. So here is Kate.
Okay.
Melissa, it's your question, you idiot.
Hello. We're here with... Kate. Okay. It's amazing book. It was so interesting, like all the history of crimes and serial killers. And it was so much more than just the murder.
Yeah.
And what got you interested in this case?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, obviously. I love the podcast.
Of course.
And thank you for the compliments on the book. What got me interested in the case actually is I had a a book publisher asked if I would be interested in writing a book about art, because I have an arts collective and do all these things in that realm. And it was the
You're
pandemic.
like, no, how about serial killers?
No, 100%, because it was the pandemic. This is just when it had started. And I just thought, why not? So I said, well, what about this? And they said, well, send us some pitches. And so that's when I was really looking at crimes that had happened in the area, so that I was familiar with the place. I really wanted it to be a serial killer. I was not going to do the Zodiac for a million reasons. So just having those two factors, also it being a cold case, the Doodler came up pretty quickly. And I was really surprised that I didn't know more about it. I had heard something in passing years ago. But other than that, I'd never seen it on any of the million
I had never heard about it either.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting about that is I wonder if the majority of the cold cases, especially ones that are not heavily publicized, are ones that are, with minority communities and indigenous communities and LGBTQ communities as well.
Yeah.
And
100%.
Cold cases in general. So to detour, my next question is, how did homophobia in that time, this is going to be at the end of the episode, but just to reiterate for people who might be coming in late, the people who were the victims, most were in the LGBTQ community, plus community. How did homophobia play in both the potential incentive of the Doodler, maybe internalized homophobia, and the reluctance of the police to pursue the crimes or people to come forward? Because that seemed to be a big theme.
Basically, the main element, I think, of the reason why this case hasn't been solved is undoubtedly homophobia. Yeah. I say in the book that it's really the killer's co-conspirator, and what keeps him shielded, his identity hidden, because what happened is when there are people who survive these crimes, they very rarely, especially during that time, didn't want to report it, didn't want to come forward, because a lot of them were closeted. And even if they were not closeted, it was just they had no faith in the police for very, very legitimate reasons.
Right.
Why am I going to put myself, I've already been traumatized so severely. I'm going to go into the cops and be re-traumatized, and they're not going to do anything anyway. And then from the killer's perspective, I'm sure you guys have talked about, there's a person of interest that San Francisco PD has had for a long time. And this person went through, alleged what we call conversion efforts now. So the one theory is that this is a person with deeply internalized homophobia, self-hatred, who is truly a member of the LGBTQ plus community, but is too ashamed to deal with it and is taking his rage out that way. However, I do write in the book, there are also what are called missionary serial killers. And an example I give is Juan Chavez in 94. Who also targeted gay men, and he was doing it because his words were they were spreading AIDS and all types of horrible, accusations. And
of course.
So he was homophobic and was using, very similar to the Doodler, a sexual lure to get his victim.
Right.
But usually, the Doodler killed people before any actual sexual acts happened, that at least that we can see from the autopsies. And Juan Chavez was similar in that way. So it's kind of a split fork where you can see why. That's my other question is, are these just hate crimes? Because if they're hate crimes, that changes the whole jurisdiction of this entire case. And to me, it is absolutely worth it, especially considering that there is no evidence of sexual activity, that we should be able to put that in a hate crime category, give that to the FBI, because it's also very unclear as to what level, if any, the FBI has had in this. You know, I don't know if they have been in close contact and just haven't shared that. I don't know why they wouldn't share that if that was happening, because that would be something that would definitely push people, meaning the killer, people who know the killer, or whatever it is, to come forward. But you can see the argument for either one. But again, the person of interest who has, you know, a lot of reasons to look toward this person, you know, in all likelihood is, you know, internalizing self-hatred, you know.
That's a good question, bringing up the hate crime aspect. Is what is preventing this from being called a hate crime? Because if you were to think about what a hate crime is, when you're only, you know, killing one kind of community, like, what is preventing this from being called a hate crime?
I mean, that's a great question. And I think, you know, we saw, I think, wherever it was, that recently a serial killer was killing homeless people of color, just coming up and shooting them on the street, right? And I think it took a minute. In that case, this person was found relatively in the scheme of things quickly. Obviously not as quickly as we'd like, because it was like 5 people who got murdered.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, they found this person. So that's a case that I kind of want to get in the nitty-gritty of and see how they went about that, because it does have some similarities. Right. But to me, I mean, if we're talking about a checklist, I think a lot of hate crimes are even, I hate to say this, even more overt, you know, but the fact that a survivor said that this man said, you people are all the same.
Yeah.
You know, like to me, that's enough. To me, that's signed, sealed, delivered. Somebody is targeting gay men and murdering gay men. Yeah. And it's not some gray area of, you know.
It's not a coincidence.
No. So to me, they should be classified as a hate crime.
Yeah, agreed.
So I don't know if they'll do that or if they have done that. You know, it's always murky, you know, figuring out exactly what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
It was really sad reading Jay, the victim, his sister, was like, said they kept trying to contact the police to like get an update, and the police were like, oh, sorry, this is like the 65th homicide this year. Like, we have too much going on.
I would lose crazy. They're lose my mind.
My brother was murdered. They're like, so we have too much going on.
Yeah. And you know, to not even say, you know, from what I gathered and from what, you know, Melissa kind of remembers, is that there was, you know, oh, well, tell me about his boyfriend, which all seems very, you know, you should be doing that. But then you have questions afterwards. Well, how much do you do? Because it seems like you have no case files and there's no more information and everything's still sealed. And Jay's murder, well, 2 things about Jay. Number one, he's the victim that we know the most about because he was local. He had a huge group of friends, and he's the only one who was really openly out.
Right.
And so his murder is a little different. And the thing was, though, that really struck me is that he seemed like such a funny, fun, just energetic person. Like the kind of person, like you guys riffing on each other, just kind of like making jokes.
Like a great spirit. Yeah.
Like he seems very much like he was that kind of a person. So that's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking that I don't have that much information, you know, comparatively speaking, as I do on him, the other victims. And I think that was definitely intentional. Yeah.
It seems like the overlap between like what Dahmer did as well and like the disinterest of the police to be like, I'm not going to prioritize this right now. I have other stuff going on.
Right.
How did they eventually connect the killings to the Doodler? Can you tell us more about like this person of interest and why this person of interest was eventually let go?
So they didn't have, well, first of all, how this person was connected is survivors had come forward and had given a sketch of the man who attacked them. And police first got a phone call from a woman who worked at the psychiatrist's office. Again, just for a blanket statement, when you hear me say psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist in the context of any type of conversion effort, they are not real psychiatrists, psychologists, or therapists. I just have to say but from in one of those offices, and she called and said, somebody needs to call us back. We have information about this case. Nobody called back. She called again. Really need someone to call us back.
Yeah.
No call back. Called again.
That's so crazy.
With a
that part was
license
so
plate.
crazy.
She called, and then finally, you won't believe that when the male doctor got the phone,
Of course. He calls. A man is calling. You need to listen
and
to
also,
me. They're like, okay,
I mean,
sir.
I don't know why he wouldn't be the first person to call. That's not a call I would pass on to my secretary that one of my so-called patients has confessed to this string of murders that are incredibly violent. I wouldn't pass that off, But either way, that's what happened. And really most of what we know about that scenario, and when I say we, I mean anybody, including PD, knows about that, is from what the detectives told the press at that time. There's the original notes are gone. One of the detectives was notorious for just writing things phonetically. So, no idea.
It could have been Dr. Priest. It could have been Dr. Priest, spelled completely different.
Right.
Yeah,
it could have been any, it could have been anybody. And
I can't remember. Continue.
No, and I was just going to say that more of the same, that it's just like that one, it's so much in this case. If just one little thing would have happened, I think that it'd be solved already, but go ahead.
I was going to say, we covered a cold case once. I can't remember which one it was, but where the officers didn't write anything down. They just decided they were going to remember it. And so there was no paper trail. It was just this one guy who was just going to remember everything.
He's so like, I remember that. And he remembered everything incorrectly. Like all his details
Of course
he was like 80 years old.
Yeah. You could ask me the most basic questions about yesterday and I wouldn't have every detail right. So the fact of going into a complex crime scene, no notebook, no, like just even bring a voice recorder and talk to yourself. That requires zero effort.
It's horrible. And it shows for just like both the disinterest and like the arrogance of the police, where they're just like, I got this / I don't really care that nothing about this really matters.
And a lot of times, I mean, I missed this episode, so I want to hear it afterwards. But a lot of times it's because they walk in and they're like, oh, this is a suicide, or this is the husband or the girlfriend or the whatever. And they're like, why would I even need to write anything down?
Yeah, they come in with a preconceived notion, so they don't even want to look any further.
No. And it's easier to just close the case. That's what gets your rate up of closing cases,
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Oakland's at 43% right now. So it's not like I think San Francisco's might be a little better, but we're well below 50% right now. So
scary.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder what Los Angeles
There was one part
is.
in the book that made me gasp, where I was like, and it was the Fox Plaza was apparently cursed by Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan.
That is the story. Seems like he also did a somewhat typical thing and kind of like exaggerated a little bit, but he loved that. The Fox Theater was there before it. He loved the Fox Theater, and that was like a whole.
He played the organ there.
Yes, he played the organ. Well, that's the thing with stories like this, and I kind of mentioned it in the book where I'm like, this is the mythology. There's so much mythology in the case as well, with the drawings and the blah, blah, blah. And same thing with Fox Plaza, where he swore, I played the organ the night before the wrecking ball came in, and blah blah blah, and then. There are other people who are like, there wasn't an organ there, so other people say that happened. It's just kind of, it's so...
he's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Not happy that building was being built. And you can tell from the case and just the history of that building. There's like a lot of suicide, a lot of
bad stuff.
All kinds of bad stuff in that building. It's still, people still live in it, so...
Oh, you have to look into that building.
Yeah, right. Maybe that's your next episode.
Yeah, circle back to that.
I liked chapter 15, the whole what makes a serial killer. And I found that interesting that the Doodler is somewhat of an outlier because his demographic is extremely under-researched.
Yes, exactly. It's so weird with all of these facts, right? Like when people see, that it's like 51 or 52% of serial killers that we have incarcerated are Black, they go, oh my God, half of serial killers are Black. No, Black men don't have the luxury of having assumed innocence all the time. Yes. So, it's much harder to, anyway. Yeah. So he's an outlier to me so much more in the sense of, like I mentioned, the sexual lure without any sex. Mm-hmm. The fact that, where these attacks happened, the fact that he sort of jumped around from being way out and, where it's pretty discreet. I mean, yes, the beach and the park and all of that were cruising grounds, but it's still, you have the roar of the ocean. It's foggy. I mean, it's pretty, if you're going to kill somebody, it's a pretty, good spot to choose. And then to go from such a huge leap to go into someone's apartment and then lose that fight and then come back to that apartment.
That's crazy.
Like a week and a half later, it's very to the point, like I, explore in the book a little bit, that there is that question. And, SFPD has talked with me about this and is very much considering this, that there is that gap between the victims who were found on the beach and all. There's a gap in time before where they were last seen and where they were found. They were not seen, at least as far as anyone has come out, including PD, seen, with anybody matching the description. All these murders and are really linked through the survivors, through the stabbing attempts, through the targeting of the gay men, and the rage is really the thing that they're connecting those two. I always have to be open to the possibility that there is more than one killer in the situation.
Oh, interesting.
Because that's a fact anyway. I talk about that in the book. There were 1, 2, 3 just in the Bay Area, and that's just targeting gay men. Right. That's not counting people who, are just going after other demographics. I have to be open to that possibility. And I know they are too, but I think it's also a matter of there's a lot, if nothing else, with these survivors that absolutely points to this one person of interest. So at the very least, getting, just someone to come forward, I think of, there has to be other victims who survived that we've never heard of. And my heart breaks for them because at the time, we've talked about the judgment and the price you pay for coming out and all of that. We went through that. But I feel like also people could feel judgment now for totally different reasons. And they shouldn't. That's all
for not coming forward at the time.
Exactly. And I just want, so deeply to get the message across that there's no space for criticism or judgment, or nobody's, they should be met with nothing but open arms and support and, whatever they need to get through that. Because I think that would be a really big part of solving this as well.
Huge. Absolutely.
Yeah. I do not believe that these 3 victims these 3 survivors I spoke about in the book are the only ones. There's just no way.
Yeah,
no, I don't think so either. Someone in the book who I found profoundly interesting is Rotea Guilford. Mm-hmm. And you had the obituary said the first San Francisco cop to mobilize the city's gay community to help catch a serial killer. Says a lot of cops didn't want to go into a gay bar back then, but Gil was comfortable with everyone. He showed me that if you treated everyone with respect, you would receive a lot more cooperation. He practiced the ultimate ideal of community policing long before the term became popular. Tell us more about him. Tell us more about Rotea.
Yeah. So Rotea Guilford, who I just referred to as Guilford, he dealt with a lot of bullshit in SFPD from the very beginning. He was a young Black officer, really had to fight his way through the ranks and organize something called Officers for Justice, which was a group of not just Black officers, other officers who, not mainly Black officers who were, saying our treatment is unfair. I mean, they would be sent out in really dangerous situations and need backup or whatever it is. And they would hear somebody on the radio, you don't have any friends here. Nobody's coming for you.
So horrible.
I mean, unbelievable. So he went through that, sued SFPD and got, testified against them in order to, for fair hiring practices, basically.
Which is a scary thing to do.
Terrifying. And then you go back to your job. I mean, where these people, your life is in these people's hands a lot. You know? So did that. And, I didn't really find anyone who had really a bad word to say about him in terms of his career and, overall his just focus on the youth, focus on getting youth to have he loved football, but really anything to keep young people focused on future opportunities and learning discipline. And he just contributed a lot to the community. And he's still known. I mean, he's a legend, like I say in the book.
That's incredible.
He is. He's just like one of the hallmark chapters in the SFPD history.
That's amazing. An aside.
I love aside.
Will you tell us about this insane Twinkie defense that you talk about in the book?
I can't, we talk about all different types of privilege, and the Twinkie defense to me is one of the most ridiculous, examples of it.
That's when I gasped in the book. Was at this Twinkie defense.
I mean, it's really unbelievable. For anybody who, I don't know if you caught anybody up in the intro about who Dan White was and murdered Harvey Milk, and the mayor at the time just walked in and shot them and walked out. There was a whole back history, as there always is in a murder, for all kinds of feeling slighted and feeling robbed. But he was actually friendly, I would say, with these people. And, had some sort of, I hesitate to say psychotic break, because when you make very clear-cut conscious choices and you're not, hallucinating or doing anything else, I don't know what you would call it.
It was like weird ego-driven episode, something.
Very deep-seated rage, total. And so he snapped and went in and shot, and then he was on trial, and his lawyer said, well, he used to be a really healthy guy, ate, all of his fruits and veggies, and he doesn't do that anymore. He has 7 Cokes a day and 20 Twinkies. And that's really what he eats, every single day. And of course, this is the lawyer. Studies show,
my God,
studies show that, how all the dangers of sugar, and it's basically like cocaine and really spiraled out into he couldn't possibly have premeditated these murders because he was in such a sugar high, sugar rage, couldn't see straight, didn't know what he was doing.
Amazing.
And they got I think it was 6 or 7 years, and he got out in 5. It's something like that.
His sentence was decreased because of this Twinkie defense, which shows the privilege of it's insane.
It's absolutely insane, and I wouldn't have convinced me on a jury, but
no.
Well, the jury found him guilty. I should say the sentencing is a slightly different thing, but
yes. To wrap it up, it is the 49th anniversary. What is being done? What are the efforts now? It's still a cold case. What's going on with the case?
So where everybody is right now is just really trying to get anyone who remembers anything to come forward, even if they think it's completely irrelevant. Anybody who was in that scene at the time, going to these bars, hearing, even if it's rumors, whatever it is.
Right.
Because what I know so far is that they have touch DNA that they have found, recovered. Most of the DNA turned out to be victims' DNA, but they have touch DNA. SFPD Crime Lab, as far as I understand it, does not do things like a SNP or an SMP profile of DNA, which is much more specific and complex. That's what they use to catch the Idaho psychopath. If they could, send that DNA off, I would. That's what I keep saying in my interviews. Is if they haven't done that, that would be the thing to do, because that would really bypass the need for people to, reopen wounds all the way and things like that. But yeah, it started with a $100,000 reward that was released in 2018, and that reward was doubled to $200,000 about a year ago, and a few weeks ago they upped it to $250,000. I feel really confident that SRPD is making this case a priority. I do think, though, that the more exposure that this case gets, the more people talk about it. That is what's going to keep that focus on, because there's always going to be something else that comes up that's, bigger and more recent and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what happened with the Golden State Killer. Like, people kept talking about it.
Yeah,
and eventually,
and then the message boards and specials and podcasts and all types of things. And that is really what got some of the top genealogists' attention, because if you can get something circulated enough, somebody's going to hear about it who knows somebody else who's, I have a cousin who, was on the Human Genome Project or something insane.
Right. Or had this crazy experience with someone who was just like that. I should go to the police and talk to them.
Because even it doesn't mean that this all happened in San Francisco, right? That's the other thing. Like LA, the more people, like I said, just who hear about it and who know about it, the more likely it'll get solved. But I do feel very strongly that it will be solved, because it's just so close.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Kate, if people want to buy your book or reach you or follow you, if you want to be followed on social media, where can people do that?
So you can go to my website or my handle, but they're both my name. And I will spell.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do that.
I'm very proud of my Ukrainian last name.
Yes,
it is Ukrainian. So it's not.
I get it. I'm Ukrainian, Ukrainian Russian.
Oh yeah, there you go. So,
yeah, Russian, Ukrainian. Yeah, well, interesting mix, but yes,
you're not alone. There are many.
Yes,
but yeah, it's just KateZaliznock.com @KateZaliznock, and they will put links for you. The other thing is you can always just search for the book. If you type in San Francisco Doodler Murders book, that's my book. So
awesome.
The one with the long name.
And also, Open Color, are you still doing that as well?
We're getting ready to do a lot of stuff with that, actually. Very exciting. Open Color is my arts collective and my arts magazine. There's actually an interview I did with Allie years ago.
Yes, I mentioned that.
So
it was so exciting.
This is an easier thing to find online. It's on Instagram or open.color, open.color. And we are opencolor.com. All one
awesome.
Word. So
thank you so much, Kate. We really, really appreciate it. This is such an important story that needs to be brought to light and solved. So thank you for doing the work and helping to get this into the public attention. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I appreciate all the work you guys have done as well. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye. Melissa, if people have any more information about this case, have any theories, or want to reach us, where can they do so?
You can email us at webcrawlerspod@gmail.com.
All right. Well, I am Allie Siegel.
I am Melissa Stettin.
And thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
An Erios Original.
Powered by Acast.